Hello, 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 GM. How are you? Fantastic. Yeah, good to feel that energy. You know, I feel like with Web3 social impact, it's just such an extraordinary moment for us to think about this because we know that our moment has not happened. And so we are all at the beginning of something that is coming. And so you in the room, it's so great to be here with you all. So what I want to talk about, we're based in Washington, D.C. I was a speechwriter in the U.S. Senate, pioneered social media and politics. And so for me, we have to think about all of the stakeholders that are involved. And the way I start to think about that is by realizing a few big trends that are happening all throughout the world. The first big trend is that the trust in all of our traditional institutions is deteriorating rapidly. Across media, across government, across businesses. We are losing faith and trust in those organizations. And at the same time, trust in crypto is also at an all-time low, right? And there are actually very few positive stories coming out of crypto. So the quote, crypto or Web3 or NFT community has a lot of work to do to bridge the trust gap. And the way that I believe that we have to do that is through this decentralized system all around the world of changemakers. These are the folks that are inside of every single community, working for their community, who often don't have any sort of stake in the game. It's almost like something inside of them just drives them to make this impact, to organize people, to bring people together, to uplift the causes that they care about. Artists, of course, have been doing this forever, but have not, well, at least in the broader sense of things, they're oftentimes left out of the stories of the change and the impact that they do make in the world. And so what does art give us, right? In the whole context of change and social impact, well, art like this extraordinary piece by Josie Bellini, this is the third year in a row that I've talked about this piece because it's so impactful to me and the thinking around Change Gallery and our team. And so it allows us in moments like when George Floyd was murdered to have some empathy with an entire community of people, to have an icon, to have a relic, to have something that when we look at it, everyone here, I can guarantee, and everyone out there can remember this moment and where they were and somehow how they were impacted or how their community was impacted. Okay, that's an emoji. I like to work a lot of emojis into my decks. So yeah, what I want to talk about here is how we can connect the dots between all of these things, between the change makers, between the cause, and between the community to build trust one story at a time. And importantly, we can also measure that impact by taking this wonderful technology of Web3 that we're all super passionate about and making it more accessible to the rest of the world through very common language and common terminology, like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These are goals that people around the world are working toward and tracking impact. And it's creating this scoreboard, right, around the big topics that folks are moving around the world. And so I just introduced this last week, but this is kind of like old school. You know, I'm like a speechwriter, but I think about things like a grid, like a common language that we can start to think about so that every single project that drops on Change Gallery, for example, and feel free to take this and use it in your projects as well, but every single project has to have these components. And once you have those components, you immediately understand that every stakeholder that cares about that piece of the grid, that is where they can add value. So all of a sudden, we go from just NFT artists making a transaction and sending money to a nonprofit to an entire community of people sitting around a table and talking about what they care about, which is the change and the social impact that can be made in the world around that project. And guess who gets to set that table? That's right, it's the change maker. So we just dropped this project with Wonder Mundo, who is a part of the Sotheby's glitch art drop, which is fantastic happening right now. Wonder Mundo, and again, I'm going to show you the change grid here. So you guys immediately look at it and you're like, got it. And that's the whole purpose of this kind of simple way of framing up big issues, big topics, big technologies, right? We're kind of like moving the technology to the side so that people can focus on the things they care about. So in this case, you can already see that Wonder Mundo cared a lot about Latinitas, which provides STEAM education for young Latinx women. And you can see her extraordinary artwork. This was an AI photography drop, collection of 222 pieces. Visit Change Gallery to mint a piece of her art and support her cause. And also you can see how we're starting to measure that, right? So this is an SDG goal that exists in the world already. It's number 10 out of 17, and it's called Reduced Inequalities. And then, of course, we start to see the story, right? This is something a cause can't do. You know how you always hear like this kind of like an idea of an artist needing exposure, you know, like this exposure thing. Well, guess who needs exposure? Causes need exposure. They can't get exposure. They don't have marketing budgets. They don't have advertising. They oftentimes don't have the talent on their team that can tell these stories. And they're competing with, in the US alone, there are 1.6 million nonprofits, which is kind of wild to think about. Here's another example of Fiona Abood, who's in the audience, amazing changemaker. Round of applause, thank you very much. So here is, of course, the wonderful story that Fiona created around Flamingo with Love. This was our first AR drop on Change Gallery, and it's a sculpture, a 3D sculpture, that will also become a physical sculpture at the Burning Man Festival later this year, and it's helping fund that. But it's also taking a serious look at impact, or at poverty, and addressing poverty. And it's giving back to Impact Market, which is one of these Web3 social impact projects. And so you can start to see how all of the dots get connected with here on every single story. And as you guys know, since you might be tech focused, like once you have a grid of stuff, that's really easy to categorize and to do a lot of really interesting things with, right? So we can start to show how powerful this is right away. So back to this idea of a grid, this is Marissa Scher, who is one of the artists at Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live, live from New York, right? You know what I'm saying? So like with Marissa, she has this extraordinary artwork. She's been to Antarctica and the Arctic, right? She cares so much about climate change. She's doing all of this stuff. She creates art with found objects on her own to help uplift this cause that she cares about so much in the world. And lo and behold, she can reach out to this big community to say, hey, help me find my cause. Who is a Web3 ready cause that we can work with as a community, that we can uplift to be a part of this story of social impact and of change in the world? Finally, I just want to say, whatever it is, whatever the cause is that you care about in the world, it's your opportunity to start onboarding your community around that cause and to start utilizing tools in the Web3 space, but also just creating like a common language to start talking with people about how to do these things and work together to make it happen. So thanks a lot and have a great day.
Let's give it up for David. That was awesome.